Now let's head over to our panel here. Joel Rubin, let's start with you. The Washington Post is standing by its reporting that the FBI was looking for, at least in part, nuclear documents, citing people familiar with the investigation. NBC News has not confirmed this independently. Now, whether or not these documents relate to anything nuclear, how big of a threat to national security is this to have top secret classified paperwork at a former president's home, which also happens to serve as a popular resort for guests?
Corey, it's great to be with you. And it's never okay for boxes of stolen secrets to be taken to one's personal property. That's a no-no. All of us who received clearances in government service, and I served in multiple administrations and national trained that you can't take it with you. You can't just walk out of the door with sensitive materials and put it in your attic and say, look, here it is. I have stuff that I can show people. And who knows what he's doing with those documents. But beyond that, it's also it's unsecured, and this is critical. Classified materials are held in secure locations in government facilities. Full stop. They are not brought to one's home for a padlock. That is not how it works. And the people walking through Mar-a-Lago for the past year plus are oftentimes foreign. We don't know where they come from. We don't know why they're there. We don't know where they're walking. And so the ability of them to access that information that has our top secrets is deeply distressing. And then, of course, the questions are opened up about what was Donald Trump planning to do with that information? Did he show it to people? Did he use it potentially for getting support, contracts, relationships, business? Who knows? A lot of dangerous questions here now are on the table.
It does. It opens a labyrinth of questions here. It is astonishing when put in those terms. Barbara McQuaid, let's talk about the word classified. Trump is already claiming that the papers in question were, quote unquote, declassified. If that's true, would this change anything in terms of the DOJ probe, especially if we're considering the 3 laws known to be used to carry out the search?
Yeah, no, this defense will fail because the 3 laws that they selected to put on this search warrant don't require that the documents be classified. I think until we saw that unsealed search warrant on Friday, we expected that they would charge the statute that was used for General Petraeus and Sandy Berger, which does require the mishandling of classified information. Instead, they require only one charge: government records, another records pertaining to the national defense, and the other concealing records when the government comes calling for them. So none of those require declassification or classification. So that defense will fail. I think this is going to be the incredible shape-shifting defense. We've already seen several iterations of this, from first denying that he had them, then accusing the FBI of planting certain evidence. Now it's declassification. I look forward to hearing what's next, but it seems likely that this one's going to fail.
There was also one point at which in there that he had a certain amount, but then now we're finding out there's more here. Oh, wait, I forgot that I had a few more with me in my home. David Ehrenberg, I want to play something for you that former FBI Assistant Director Frank Figliuzzi said to Stephanie Ruhle late last night on the 11th hour. Listen here.
I would not be surprised, by the way, if they're actually trying to fingerprint some of these documents to determine who touched them and when, because, you know, we're dealing with government employees here who probably have fingerprints on file. So who's touched them, who's seen them? That's part of a damage assessment. But also, we're so focused on Trump that I think the investigation, Stephanie, has to include others who were conspirators with him. He can't have done this all alone. It's unlikely that he packed all those boxes, kept them in wherever they were at Mar-a-Lago. Someone had to have knowledge of this, and I think they're looking at other people as well.
Dave, what's your take on that, whether investigators could be looking at others in Trump's circle?
Oh, I agree with that, and I think that Trump will try to make someone into the fall guy. Be careful, Mark Meadows. And so I do think that the investigation is beyond Donald Trump. I think Trump has to be worried about the mole within Mar-a-Lago, because there's a reason why they got the search warrant. They had someone on the inside who knew that Trump was allegedly lying about the possession of these documents and knew where it was located inside that safe. Here's the other troubling thing. Based on the statute cited, that mole may have also told the feds that Trump had destroyed documents. So it's not just that Trump possessed documents, but that secret source may have observed Trump destroying the documents, which is another crime altogether. And so, yeah, he's got a lot to worry about, because the one thing you know about Donald Trump, he values loyalty above everything else, even though loyalty to him is a one-way street.
It does seem to be eroding at this point, at least to some parts of his inner circle. Barbara, I want to be crystal clear about this. We cannot say for sure that Trump is being investigated for espionage charges. All we can say is that investigators are using the Espionage Act as well as two other laws as the basis for this search. But with that said, just how serious is it that the Espionage Act is even being cited in these court documents? And what's the potential penalty for that?
The Espionage Act is no doubt a very, very serious crime. But you're right, the name can be misleading because it encompasses a whole range of activities. For example, this is the statute that was used to charge the Rosenbergs for selling secrets to the Soviets, for which they received the death penalty. And that is part of the Espionage Act. But it can also be as simple as having in your home national defense documents that you know don't belong to you, that are so sensitive that they could cause injury to the United States or they could help a foreign adversary, and that you know that, and yet you have them outside of the place they're supposed to be. It could be as simple as that, and I think at this point we should presume that's the level. But the one part of this that is very important is it requires that the documents not just be classified, not just be pertaining to the national defense, but that they're so secret, the nature of them makes it clear to the person who possesses them that they could damage the United States national security or help a foreign adversary. And that's a very important part. That part of it, the lowest part, is punishable by up to 10 years in prison.
I want to expand on something that Barbara just said, Joel. You know, some people might hear classified documents and think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You worked in the State Department. You're aware of the international picture. How likely could it be that other countries, including adversaries of the U.S., would try to get documents if they knew they were stored at a place like Mar-a-Lago?
100% likely.
Okay.
Adversaries want to understand every single thing that comes into the president's inbox. Every day, the president receives material from across the interagency. That means all the agencies that work on national security issues, State Department, Defense Department, intelligence community, you name it. Every single thing that he receives is extremely valuable to foreign governments, foreign adversaries, and allies to boot, who want to understand what the president is thinking. What is the U.S. planning? How is the U.S. thinking about responding potentially to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan? Are we serious? Will we actually defend Taiwan, or is that just a bluff? How about with France? Speaking to the president of France, what do we know about Emmanuel Macron? What could Donald Trump potentially want to use as leverage against an ally like that? Everything, every single article is extremely valuable.
And we already know of instances where people have tried to break into Mar-a-Lago. Certainly a different case of breaking in there than it would be to try to get through Congress or the White House. Specifically. Okay, Dave, with the last few seconds we have here, I want to know if after you've read the court documents, you have any other takeaways from this investigation.
I know that we have come to accept that Donald Trump has broken norms, but what we have learned is that a federal magistrate judge found probable cause that the former president has evidence of espionage at Mar-a-Lago. If that doesn't shock the conscience, I don't know what does.
There we go. We'll leave it there. Actually, you know, because that was so quick, Dave, I also want to point out really quickly here the irony of this. President Trump could end up punishing citizen Trump for all of this. Quoting an analysis from the Washington Post, quote, if Trump is found to have violated federal law in removing and retaining classified documents without authorization, he could be convicted of a felony punishable by 5 years in prison. And that conviction would be a felony carrying that punishment because of a law Donald Trump signed in. That specifically it came about because of the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Trump raised the penalty in the aftermath of that. Barbara, I'll have you give us final reaction to that.
So interestingly enough, that is not one of the charges filed at the moment, or at least charges used on the search warrant, because that one does require classified information. But the declassification defense, I think, fails anyway, because the president alone cannot declassify documents. So ultimately, if there are charges in this case in an indictment, it could include that charge. And irony of ironies, it makes it no longer a misdemeanor, but a felony punishable by 5 years in prison because Donald Trump demanded and signed that into law. I call that karma.
Joel Rubin, thanks for joining us. And the rest of our panel this morning, thanks for starting us off. Stick around because we've got more questions for you coming up.